Hello everyone, welcome to ClearTrack's YouTube knowledge series. My name is Venugopal Gella. I am a practicing chartered accountant and today's session is about intermediary services under GST. I am sure most of you are aware of the CBIC, the latest clarification on intermediary, where they have rescinded Circular 107 and issued Circular 159. So today's session we are going to look at what is the intermediary service and what are the place of supply, advanced rulings around this, and what are the issues in this area. What is the clarification given by the circular? I'm sure some of you might be aware about the circular and some might be new to this. So I thought it is apt that we really understand the provision of the intermediate services and why did it really become so much an issue, or this is an issue which is there from the service tax era. Why are we thinking that there is an issue that exists, right? These are the things which we are going to cover, and feel free to ask your questions in the chat section. Put your questions in the chat. I am going to take up those questions live. And if my voice is clear and audible, you can put a hi in the chat so that we can see, yes, it's audible. I can see people watching. Yes, okay, all right. Let's get on understanding the meaning of the intermediary. What are the legal provisions that have been given in the law about the intermediary? And more so, what is very important is what is a common understanding which we have about intermediary. And let's look at the relevance of from the taxation perspective. Now, 2 subsection 13 of the IGST Act talks about intermediary, and which says intermediary means a specific section. It says intermediary means a broker or an agent or any other person by whatever name called. So now the moment the word by whatever name is called is added, all other synonyms, adjectives, whatever you can fit in for a broker, agent who are in line with this, whatever be the name called, whose main job is to arrange or facilitate supply of goods or services or both between 2 or more persons, but does not include a person who supplies such goods on his own account. If I am a trader of, let's say, I import this item and sell, I will not be an intermediary. Though there are 3 people, there is someone from abroad sending the goods to here and I am selling it to someone here. There are 3 people involved. Still, it's not an intermediary because I am on my own account. I am procuring and selling it. But if I facilitate trade between a person X in Singapore who is selling this item from Singapore to, say, a customer in Bombay, Maharashtra, I am ensuring that this deal goes through. I am connecting both the people. Then I would be an intermediary. It's a plain, simple definition. I'm sure this gives you some clarity as to what the word intermediary means. Now, since this word agent has been used, let's understand the word agent. Agent is defined under CGST Act. Okay, 2 subsection 5. It means a person, and it includes factor, broker, commission agent, arhatiya, whatever be the name called, who carries on business of supply of receipt or goods on behalf of another. So even an agent is someone who is trying to carry on the business of another. See, I do not want to undertake all the risk. Of course, the rewards are associated with the risk. So I don't intend to undertake everything. I will only undertake a small amount of activity. Like an employee, but little extended service more than an employee. So if business doesn't happen, I will not take risk. So I get the goods, I stock it. Now, sale happens, I am good, I'll take my commission. Sale doesn't happen, I will return back the goods. You do not have a godown, I will facilitate the godown. You do not have a person to collect the money, I will ensure I will go collect the check deposit. I'll do all the services, right? So it is in between someone selling on own account and the principal. So that's where the agent. So intermediary is linked to the agent. So what are the important features of an intermediary? So intermediary is a broker or an agent. He is someone who is facilitating supply of goods or services. He is the one who is facilitating supply of goods or services. And very important, he is not changing the nature of supply. So there is a supply already which is happening. There is a principal who is selling from Singapore to a customer in Bombay. So the deal is done. It is agreed. As an intermediary, I am not changing the supply. My supply is to arrange, facilitate between two parties. So I am only acting as a mediator, broker, commission agent, whatever be the name you can think of. Now let me derive it from the dictionary meaning. Okay, let's look at what does dictionary says. So dictionary says, this is from Cambridge Dictionary. Intermediary means someone who carries message between people who are unwilling or unable to meet. So someone who for some reasons are unable to meet and do. So intermediary is doing that activity. So it is very important that we need to know that intermediary is only a facilitator. So a broader understanding, he can be a broker or an agent who is facilitating. So that is something what an intermediary means. I think so far we are clear with the meaning of an intermediary. Deriving from the meaning of an intermediary, if I have to bifurcate into two activities, who is an intermediary and who is not an intermediary, if I have to say someone who is a mediator, he is an intermediary. But someone instead of mediating, he buys and sells on his own account, not an intermediary. Intermediary gets a commission for a transaction. For someone who is not an intermediary, his sale consideration is the full value of the transaction. So that is not an intermediary. Intermediary is someone whose commission is earned in relation to the supply. If my commission is independent of the supply and it is an independent supply, not related to the principal supply, my job, let's say, is to go and explain features of this product to various customers, or I would say prospective customers in India. Whether those customers buy or not is not my job. I am doing an independent supply of either a marketing advertisement service or management consultancy service. Then such services are not intermediary. So I wanted to really get, if this item which is being sold to a person for such supply, I get a commission, I am an intermediary. I am doing an independent marketing activity of an item and that has got nothing to do whether or not it is sold, then I am not intermediary. Then I would be a management or a marketing consultant. So that is the primary difference between an intermediary. Let me give you some more examples. Like Mr. Amitabh is endorsing Parker pen, and when he gives the advertisement, he is looking at the Parker pen, he is writing it, he is saying it is good, Lajawab, everything. Customers are inspired by it, they are buying the pen. Maybe his commission or for the advertisement is linked for number of minutes he has spent, number of times that advertisement is run, or the percentage of the sales that are happening, whatever, that is an independent activity. So I wanted to get something which is a transaction not influenced to the sale is not an intermediary. So I have taken an example that is not an intermediary. Let's say the customer in Bombay, which is Y, has already identified the supplier X in Singapore. Sale has completed, the payment has done. He is appointing a CHA to clear the goods or properly pack it, transport, say from Chennai port to Bombay. So some training activity for the product when it comes, when it lands to the Bombay godown, someone coming and explaining on the product, how to install, how to use it. See, this service is in relation to the supply, but it is independent of that supply. His contract, the person now who is doing the services Z, is independent of X and Y. So though Z is doing a transaction for X and Y supply, but it is not directly linked to it, hence it is not intermediary. Now when does the Z becomes an intermediary? If X appoints Z to sell the product to Y and he pays some commission for doing so, then Z becomes an intermediary. Or conversely, the Y in Bombay says, I need this machine, I am hiring you, the Z, to go scout around the world, procure this machine and give it to me, I will give you a commission for it. Someone who is concluding the supply. So someone who is directly attributable to a transaction would be an intermediary. I am sure now this got some clarity on who is an intermediary and who is not an intermediary. Now understanding who is an intermediary and who is not intermediary, what is the issue in it? Is there a real issue in it? Yes. Now the issue comes is whether such transaction, is it an export of service? Whether the transaction which is undertaken by an intermediary, the transaction which an intermediary is undertaking, can it be qualified as an export of service? To subsection 6 of the GST IGST Act talks about export of service, which says export of service means when supplier of service is located in India. So here the Z who is mediating is located here in India. I am in India. Recipient of service is located outside India. X, the seller of this machine, is located in Singapore. The place of supply shall be outside India. Generally, the export means the place of supply should be outside India. Payment for such service to be received in convertible foreign currency. So my commission which I am getting from the Singapore guy is coming in foreign currency. And the supplier of service and the recipient of service, so myself and X, should not be merely an establishment of the distinct person. So we shouldn't be related. In this case, it should be an export of service. So if I go back to this definition, if I go back to this activity, if we look at it, X is in Singapore, supplier, recipient of service outside India. Z, I am here in India providing the facilitating service. I am raising a forex invoice, Sing dollars, I will get convertible foreign currency, everything is happening. Ideally it's export of service, so there shouldn't be any GST. That's the plain understanding of the law, correct? But here comes the issue. It fulfills all the definitions except the clause 3, which is place of supply of service should be outside India. Place of supply of service should be outside India. See, definitely it cannot be in the goods, because in the goods I will become a principal to principal. Only intermediary, I am acting as a service, I am providing some service, so place of supply of service should be outside India. Now let's look at what is the place of supply. Now, because the place of supply determines what type of levy shall be there. What is the general understanding for place of supply? The general rule for place of supply of services: 12 subsection 2 for domestic, 13 subsection 2 for an international transaction. And see, the supply of services made to a registered person, that's the general understanding. The place of supply is location of recipient. If it is made to an unregistered person, then if you know where that person is, then the location of such person is the place of supply. Only when you don't know to whom the address and other things, then the place of supply is location of the supplier, right? And the 13, which is international transaction, 12, which is domestic transaction, talks about the place of supply to be location of recipient when it is known, subject to all other subsection provisos. Now, here comes the challenge. What is the challenge? The challenge is 13 subsection 8 clause B of the IGST Act, which talks about the place of supply of specific services. It says, the 13.8 says, the place of supply shall be location of services for 3 categories which has been mentioned. One is NBFC, then one is transportation. What I have highlighted here, the second one is intermediary services, right? So if it is an intermediary services, then the place of supply is location of supplier. Now, if the place of supply is location of supplier, it grossly fails the condition which is laid down under export of services definition 6 of the thing, which it grossly fails the point number 3, which means it has to be outside India. If the intermediary services is not outside India, it is location of supplier who is here in India, then automatically it is not export of service. The moment it is not export of service, then it is taxable here in India. So if it is taxable here in India, so one has to pay CGST, IGST, whatever applicable taxes, which will come a little later. So the biggest issue under intermediary is, even though my recipient of service is outside India, even though I am raising invoice in foreign currency, even though both the recipient and supplier are not recipient, even though the convertible forex is received in India, it is not export and transaction is leviable to taxes. So this is something one should be very mindful of. Okay. Now, having understood that, okay, if this is the issue, that intermediary services are going to be taxed, now is there any little bigger impact? I would want to take through the little bigger impact and then come down the judicial proceedings and other aspects, especially what is the clarification given by the circular. I want to now talk about another category of services, which is order services. Order services. What is an order? Section 14 of the Act talks about supply of an order services by any person located in non-taxable territory. So someone who is outside India and received by a non-taxable online recipient. I'll explain in a while non-taxable online recipient. The liability to pay tax is the supplier of the services who is located in the non-taxable territory. Now that is where one have to be very careful of. and we all know GST audits are around, GST or 99C is around, so you have to be very careful and identify. And intermediary is liable to pay taxes in case of an order if he is the one who is arranging or facilitating supply of services, such services. So before I go to this definition of non-taxable online recipient, I will explain this in a way with a simple example. So I have said the on supply of order services by a person located in non-taxable territory received by a non-taxable online recipient, the supplier of services located in non-taxable territory shall be the person paying tax on such supplies. We all know in the iOS app or Google Play Store, you have lot of apps. Some are paid apps, some are free apps. Now, there is an app owner, let's say Bluehost. I am sitting here in India. I want to use the service. Instead of buying from Bluehost, I am going to Play Store and buying it. So what does the Play Store doing? Play Store is actually facilitating this trade to happen. They are the one who are enabling this service. Even though we know this Play Store is like same like Flipkart or Amazon, where they are not the actual seller of the goods. They are only putting up a website facilitating all the sellers to list their products. I go, I buy whichever is the product is cheap, whatever is the discount available, or whatever which is highly rated, what is the latest available in the market release, whatever the criteria, I am going to pick a product. Having picked the product from Amazon or a Flipkart doesn't make Amazon or Flipkart liable to pay GST on that, because the supply is made by some other supplier. But here in case of an order services, the order is the intermediary who is located here is responsible to pay taxes. Now you will need little more detailed about this definition. So let's look at this definition once again. Non-taxable online recipient means, so only in case of supply to a non-taxable online recipient. Please look at it. Received by non-taxable online recipient, supplied by any person, received by non-taxable online recipient. Who is non-taxable online recipient? Government, local authority, government authority, individual, or any other person not registered. So if the supply is made to individual or any other person not registered, they are called non-taxable online recipient. Now, why is this word game? If you look at carefully, if I am registered, someone is outside India giving me service, it would be import of service, grossly qualify as supply, I will be paying under reverse charge. But here I am not registered. So someone who is providing those order services are bound to make the payment of the taxes. However, intermediary located outside India has been given some exemptions. They said, okay, you as an intermediary, if you are providing an order services, I will give you an exemption and I will be leaving you outside the scope, provided invoice or the bill is clearly indicating that someone X is selling to Y and Z is nowhere there in the picture. Z is neither collecting or processing the payment. He doesn't involve or authorize in the delivery. He doesn't undertake terms and conditions of the supply. So if all of this, and it is like, and if all of this is happening, then the Play Store can say, look, I don't know, so I don't tax on me. But unfortunately, like if we talk about Google Play Store or things, they clearly make sure that they collect the thing, they facilitate and they do the service. So now let's understand order. when they are liable, when they are not liable. Let's say when they are liable. Now, the Hotstar, which is registered in India, allowing its users to watch the movies. Now, it can be through any cable or anything. Now, who is liable? It's Hotstar. It is principal to principal. Case 2, same, the Bluehost. An Indian company is now asking Bluehost to give the hosting services. So, Indian company is registered. It is undertaking some online data access retrieval services. Indian company paying under reverse charge. Case 3, Bluehost is registered on Google Play Store and the receiver is accessing through Google Play Store. Here the Play Store is liable. The Play Store is liable as an intermediary. Please watch case 3 very carefully. Who is liable to tax? So in case 1, supplier in India. In case 2, the recipient in India. In case 3, the recipient is in India but it is through intermediary. So please understand who is liable to pay the taxes. So when intermediary is not liable, if the invoice is issued by the original service supplier and he clearly is indicating that he is the supplier of services, intermediary is not processing the payment, not authorizing, not collecting anything, then intermediary is not liable. Let's look at some examples. Of course, firstly there is one exemption. Sorry. The exemption, okay. This is IGST rate notification 9/2017 only. This is exempting for only facilitating for supply of goods and not services, firstly. Second, both the supplier and recipient should be outside India. Here the location of the supplier as well as the recipient are outside the taxable territory. Then they have given an exemption. So what does that mean? It is still an intermediary services. It will not qualify as an export. It will be qualified as an exempt supply. So there is a difference between qualification as an exempt supply or a qualification of an export. In case of a qualifying as an export, though there is no tax, you can claim refund of the input tax credit attributable to such supply. But if it is an exempt supply, 17 subsection 2 blocks you to take any input tax credit attributable to the supply. So rule 42. So this would become a T2 credit and you cannot avail any input tax credit. However, they have given some conditions and they said you have to maintain this documentation for 5 years, like there is a bill of lading, the contract which has been executed by the seller and the buyer, the commission invoice, the material origin receipt, all those declarations, please maintain and consider this as an exempt service. So this is the another thing one should be careful of. Now, in midst of all this, the circular 159 has also been issued. Earlier to that we had circular 107. So in circular 159 they clearly said, so we are rescinding circular 107, so it is no longer applicable. And 159 did not bring anything new. It only reiterated these points, made it more clear. It gave 4 illustrations, the way I have given those illustrations, which I have picked from there. I'll also share the 1 or 2 illustrations, but it clearly said, please see if these are the one which exist, whether someone is an intermediary or not an intermediary. Why this is issue which is coming up? See, 4 years of GST implementation or 4.5 years technically. Now, someone constituted a supply as export, did not pay GST till date and claimed any refund of input tax credit thereon. After so long, now the government classified such supply as an intermediary and said, look, you have to pay GST on this and this is an intermediary services. Multiple issues. One, he did not collect any tax, not provided for it, he is now paying tax. Second, whatever the refund which has been claimed, that has to be paid back because he is not eligible for the refund. Third, he did not pay tax, he has to pay interest till date. Fourth, department would levy notice under 74 saying that you have intention to evade the tax, so it is a fraud. So minimum penalty of 15% of the tax or as equivalent to tax. So it is like multiple like a just what, and sometimes it may cost as high as shutting down of the business. So you have to be very careful whenever you are claiming any benefit. Now what does this circular 159 clarification it has given? It has again reiterated, please ensure minimum there are 3 parties in case of an intermediary. So there is a supplier and the buyer, so someone who is a facilitator. And it also highlighted, just because there are 3 parties in any transaction doesn't make it as an intermediary all the cases. And if there are activity happening only between 2 parties, then it cannot be an intermediary, right? So that caution has been given. Then you identify 2 supplies. So this product is being sold, then I am also getting paid commission. So there are 2 supplies. So there is a main supply and ancillary supply. Ensure that something like that exists. Then intermediary services provided to have a character of agent, that broker agency relationship should be there, whatever be the name called, but see whether those ingredients exist or not. And very important, to ensure the department doesn't make a mistake, they said if a supply is happening on own account, so I am the importer on record, I clear the goods, I file the bill of lading and I clear the goods and I sell it locally, then I am selling it on my own account and it is not to be treated as intermediary services. Even if I am further making an export of it, do not treat it as an intermediary services. Alright. Lastly, subcontracting for a service is an intermediary service. Okay, here one should be careful. I said between X and Y, Z is facilitating, so it's an intermediary. Not necessary all the times it has to be the moment subcontract is done, it has to be treated as intermediary. See, it is job of X to make the goods sold. So X can hire an employee and that employee can do. Instead of employee, he has hired a Z and who did it. See, it's kind of subcontracting for a service. See, if something to be done, that service has been given to someone to do, doesn't make it as an intermediary. So that also one has to be clear, because you cannot say that okay, your job has been done by someone, so it is necessary facilitating this deal. So that is where in that example which I have also said, if X and Y have already completed their transaction, Z has been appointed to get the goods cleared, packed, installed, trained, whatever be the thing, then the activity is done by Z cannot be treated as intermediary. So an activity which X should do, X has given it to Z, subcontracted it, do not treat it as intermediary. And this is a circular issued by the board. And any circular issued by the board are binding on the department officers. So whenever there is some notice comes, I would request you to refer to this circular, fulfill these ingredients and respond back. Now, are there any examples given? They have given 4 examples. So let me clarify which are the illustration. There are 2 illustrations who is an intermediary, 2 not an intermediary. Now, identification of a purchaser for the seller. Identification of a purchaser for the seller. So I am trying to see who will buy the goods. It's a purely an intermediary services. Next, they gave another example. An insurance company which is outside the India. So some XYZ insurance company who is outside India, they want to process the claims in India. So back office processing here in India is little economical. So they want to find a person who will identify and claim a processing entity. So let's say they are giving this contract to Infosys. Now they didn't know who is Infosys in India, so they are appointing me to identify a BPO entity. So I am the one who is identifying, say, Accenture, Infosys, someone, and connecting to that insurance company. Okay, then my services, because I am bringing two persons together for supply of goods or services, then my service would be treated as an intermediary service. Though this BPO is doing insurance process for which the insurance is getting cleared, that is not an intermediary service. I have identified someone who is going to deliver some service to them. So the intermediary could be a buying agent or a selling agent, right? So these are the two examples they have given. I said out of 4, these 2 are to be treated as intermediary. They gave 2 more examples which said not an intermediary services. What is that? They said outsourcing of a services to a third party, wherein third party may interact with the customers of his principal, is not an intermediary service. I have to do something, instead of me doing it, I gave it to someone. The biggest impact of intermediary notification came in to ITES, information technology, the enabling services, all the BPOs, and they clearly said, see, activity of BPO is to process something, and they may get paid out of the sale proceeds. The consideration could be anything, but the BPO services is not an intermediary services. However, whatever is the known facts and everything, they reiterated, but with a disclaimer saying that, see, these are all only a guiding principles. What we gave is only for illustrations. You still have to refer to the principles which we have said, what is intermediary and what is not an intermediary. Check 2 distinct supplies, 3 parties, character of an agent, not selling on own account, all these things please check. Now the issues, if we have to look at it, the marketing services, right? Under the service tax regime, so much talked about the judgment, I would say, about is GoDaddy, right, where they have said that the services of marketing and branding provided by the Indian entity to its parent in USA shall be regarded as an export. Now it was earlier the officer said it is an intermediary because the parent is in US and the Indian operations is only selling it, so they are getting a sales commission from the parent company. Maybe for the transfer price you are doing cost plus whatever, but it is, you are getting some commission, hence it is intermediary and not to be treated as an export. But again, little long battle, so they have cleared not intermediary. But what is not clear in whole of this discussion, if I have to say, the words used is intermediary is someone who is facilitating. What do you mean by facilitating? To what extent? Right? That is also very important. Sometimes the remuneration is paid as a percentage of sale. Now just because the remuneration is paid as a percentage of sale, does it change the character? That is also someone has to be very mindful of while applying the definition of intermediary. Alright. So with this we have come up the basic understanding of what is intermediary and what is not an intermediary. Now let's look at under GST, what are there any case laws, how does that have been dealt with. I have picked 3 advanced rulings and 2 judgments. Let's look at them one by one. The first one is the first of it, if I have to say, Vishakara, the instruments. There are 2 questions where the commission is received and they are receiving in the forex, so they want to know whether it would be an export of service, and this commission is purely received for installing machinery. And the second question is, would it be, if it is taxable, would it be IGST or CGST, SGST, intrastate or interstate? The response of the advanced ruling authority, firstly, for the first question they gave negative. saying that the commission is received for rendering the intermediary services, hence it is not zero rated supply. The second thing they said is, since we are talking under section 13, it would be interstate supply and not intrastate supply, so IGST should be levied at 18%. Now my view, my inference, of course what they have said as intermediary not qualifying export is very right, but I think place of supply shall be treated as location of supplier. The moment place of supply is location of supplier, I feel it would be CGST and SGST and not IGST. Again, advanced rulings have to be taken always with a pinch of salt, because it is, we have seen multiple advanced rulings, a different thing. Then the second advanced ruling related is Toshniwal brothers, where their question is whether pure and mere promotion and marketing services, will it be intermediary? They said it is purely marketing and promotion services, will it be intermediary? Now this is where I want the viewers to always go through any judgment in detail. See, most of the time the WhatsApp forwards or the headlines in the newspapers are misleading, and it thinks that something is wrong. Okay. Then the second question is, they are also providing after sales support service, and would it be a composite contract, and when would it be a composite supply? What will be the principal supply for such contract was asked. The third, if it is qualifying for export of service or not, is the three questions which they have asked. Now primary reading of the question, it is not an intermediary service, but the advanced ruling authority clearly said it is an intermediary service. Second, the composite contract, where they said can it be a composite supply for after sale proceeds, they said no, it is not a composite supply. Third question, whether they asked is it export, the answer they said is this is not applicable, so it is not an export, so it need not be answered since the place of supply question is not under the advanced ruling jurisdiction. So that is a citation they gave, and they did not answer it. But why did they say it as an intermediary service when it was purely for marketing and promotion service? See, when they have looked at the contract, they said that the agreement is discussed in detail and it is appearing to be a sales commission. The amount, the quantum of the consideration which the applicant is getting is only for happening of a sale. If sale is not happening, he is not getting any commission. So they said it doesn't appears to us as a marketing activity, is a sales activity. The moment it is a sales activity, there is no question of treating it as an export. It is to be treated as an intermediary, and place of supply would be here in India. And that is where I feel the advanced ruling is right to that extent. The third advanced ruling is Asai Kasai India Private Limited, where the question they have asked is the support services, would it fall under HSN 9985 intermediary, or would it be under 9961, the support services code which they were looking at. Now here the ruling has come within a little detail, where they have said that, see, the services which are provided by the applicant are in the nature of research, and these research which are on the matters relating to the functions of the holding company. So the activities have no direct bearing on supply happening or non-happening of an activity done by the parent, hence it is a support services, hence it would be qualifying as an export. So even here they have said that it is not an intermediary, and they said it is export. So in my view, this is clear and correct. So if I have to put a general conclusions to it, is intermediary is generally charging a commission against a specific service that they are providing. The commission income would be subject to the GST, and all the provisions of the GST law are applicable. So these are the advanced rulings. So there are two High Court judgments which I would like to discuss. One is of the Gujarat High Court in case of Material Recycling Association of India. Whenever you go to the court, the plea from the applicant would always be the constitutional validity of the provisions, and the queries were raised as, is it constitutionally valid to treat a transaction under section 13 as CGST as GST? Something, if it would not qualify as an export of service, so is the place of supply provision, did it go overboard and said that place of supply should be in India? Is it not ultra vires and is unconstitutional? It's a question which have been placed in Gujarat High Court in case of Material Recycling Association. The observations of the Gujarat High Court is, it is not ultra vires and everything is perfect. Then there is a second judgment which is Bombay High Court in case of Dharmendra M. Jani, where again the constitutional validity of 13(8) is taken, read with the provisions of section 8 of the IGST Act, whether are they ultra vires. And the business of the client is in providing marketing and promotion services to customers located outside India. So they facilitate identifying a buyer, make sure they get sold, they get a commission, right? So what they have challenged is, firstly, it is an export of service, so you are levying a tax, taxes cannot be exported, so it is ultra vires to Article 269A. Again, so this 269A where the GST which has the powers which have been coming, and they said GST is a destination based tax on consumption, and they have also said the equality is taken out, so someone who is doing an export, they have not taxed, but I am doing an export, I am taxed. And this, they have also constituted Article 19 where there is a restriction of doing the business. So with this I am unable to do the business at a competitive thing. So all these questions have been challenged. And interestingly, in Bombay High Court, now the observations have been made saying that, see, this is an artificially created deeming provision. 13(8) deemed the location of supplier as the place of supply. Hence, it is whether it is ultra vires or not to be questioned. Now, it is a two-member bench. Judges were divided. So the two judges had different views. The matter was referred to the Chief Justice, and Chief Justice, after looking both the things, his views were, he clearly said, see, 13 subsection 8 clause B nor 8 subsection 2 of 8 IGST Act are unconstitutional. They seems to be very much constitutional. The moment they are constitutional, they are not ultra vires, where they said that GST is consumption based tax and the taxes are now getting exported, so here are the ultra vires. And they said, okay, the CGST SGST is discussed under CGST Act, and section 13(8) is for interstate transaction. So again, isn't it ultra vires? Again, the Chief Justice felt that they are well within the powers of the law. So friends, these are the various things one should be aware of what an intermediary services is. And to reiterate, the circular 159 which have given a clarification saying that if there are 3 parties, there should be 2 distinct supplies, there should be a character of an agent, it should not be on his own account or subcontracting, then only it will be intermediary services. But if something of this exists, then definitely it would be an intermediary services. The moment it becomes an intermediary services, the place of supply is here as a location of supply which is in India, and it would be leviable to tax. These are the clarifications which have been given under circular 159. I am sure you got little deeper insight on this subject, right? Feel free to put any questions if you have in the chat, and even if you are putting a question in the chat box at a later, so our tax team would be replying to your questions. With this note, I conclude this session. I thank you and thank ClearTax for giving an opportunity to discuss on this topic, which is little contagious. I would say that someone who held something is not taxable now is going to become tax if they fit under intermediary services. So you got to be very careful whenever you are saying a supply is either exempt or supply is export. Please apply all the provisions, get an opinion in writing, get it ensured, doubly insured that you are mitigated of likely possible issues that are coming up. I said, what is the issue that can come up? 4 years later, the tax is being demanded. The ITC refund which you have claimed is rejected. Interest is levied for not paying the taxes. Penalty equivalent to tax will be demanded since the taxes were not paid. So this is going to become a costly affair. 18% is the tax rate, 18% plus 18% penalty, 36%. Interest rate at 24% would be demanded. 4 years interest is not paid, again that is equivalent to tax. So 3 times of the tax is being paid. So I would request one have to be very clear and careful before treating a transaction as not an intermediary. So make sure the provisions of the law are well read and applied. On this note, I conclude the session. Thank you. Let's see if there are any questions at this point. If there are any questions, you can put your questions in the chat. Okay, thank you and bye bye.